Good day, poker peeps. This is Sky with Smart Poker Study. And in this video, I'm going to help you pull off some more Cbet bluffs using the Smart HUD 4 PokerTracker 4. So on the screen right here, you got a pocket fives hands. We'll go through the hand in just a little bit, but take a look at the Smart HUD. We got VPIP, PFR, Cbet flop, Cbet turn, fold to flop Cbet, fold to turn Cbet. Those are the number one stats that we're going to be looking at today. Speaking of stats, I want to give you my free PDF, the Top 10 Poker HUD Stats Cheat Sheet. Link in the description down below. The first page of this bad boy has some information for you, but starting on page 2 are where the stats begin. And today, we're going to discuss a little bit about VPIP and PFR, looking at those two numbers together to determine what kind of opponent we're up against. And because we're going to be Cbet bluffing, we're really going to be focusing on the fold to flop Cbet statistic. But I'll show you also the Cbet flop. Even when you're making a Cbet into your opponents, their Cbet stat can be useful, and I'll show you that, or show you how, in this video. Alrighty, so the idea here is when you're Cbet bluffing, the basic situation that you're in is you open raise pre-flop. They called you, but you missed the flop. Your pocket ace is without a heart. The flop comes down 5, 6, 7, all hearts, right? Your pocket fives like this one, flop comes down ace, queen, ace, and you totally whiffed the flop. So the question you got to ask yourself, and what you got to figure out, is how are you going to earn this pot now? You can't be value betting, you have to be bluff betting. Every Cbet is for value or a bluff. If you don't have a reason in your mind for making the Cbet, you're probably better off just not making it at all. The basic idea is that value Cbets want your opponent to call or raise. So you have some kind of a strong hand, probably at least top pair or better. Now, bluff Cbets means that you probably did not hit the pot or hit the flop at all, or hit a very weak hand and you're susceptible on the board. So you just want to bet to take it down right now. So the main question you got to ask yourself is, can they find the fold? And in this video, we'll discuss a lot of the strategies and the statistics that help you determine whether or not they can find the fold. One of the things that you want to do with your bluff Cbets, you want to target players who can find a fold. So let's start looking at the HUDs just around the table. This is the kind of thing you should do before you even play the hand, before you open raise or call with pocket fives. Take a look around and see who is susceptible to various plays. For example, 27-18 VPIP and PFR, super fishy player. That's why he's color-coded green. But look, he also folds to flop Cbets 60%. So he calls a lot pre-flop, 35, but he gives up flop. Awesome. He's a great player to isolate and take it down with a bluff Cbet on the flop. Look at this player over here, Villain 176. This is what I call a turn honest player. He does not fold on the flop. It is only 1 out of 3, but just concern yourself with just the percentages right now. If it was a greater sample, like 3 out of 9, a little bit more indicative of the tendency to not fold on flops. But let's just pay attention to the 33%. Doesn't like to fold on the flop, but on the turn, 1 out of 1 has folded plenty of times, 100% on the turn right here. Very turn honest player. And earlier, I had mentioned we can also use Cbet stats even when we're considering making a Cbet ourselves. Cbet stats help us kind of confirm our reads and understand our opponent's tendencies. He does not fold on the flop, not flop honest. He Cbets a ton on the flop, not flop honest again. He's demonstrated with 2 different plays and 2 different situations that he is not honest on the flop. But look over here. On the turn, folds 100% of the time on the turn, and he bets 2 out of 4, 50%. He is much more turn honest. His betting decreases from flop to turn. His folding increases from flop to turn. Just generally a turn honest player. So if we're going to want to bluff this player with Cbets, we'll probably have to double barrel him if he's the one that calls us in this particular hand. But planning for how you can exploit your various opponents is a great way. Let's imagine we didn't have pocket fives. We had a nothing hand right now. We just folded. We got all the time in the world to do something with our mind before that next hand is dealt. We can start looking at stats. We can watch the action of the hand, learn from our opponents, learn their tendencies, and start planning how to exploit them. So target players who can fold. When you're c-betting, you need to bet enough to get them to fold. How often have you flopped a super weak hand, maybe nothing at all, maybe just a one king overcard, but your opponent c-bets one big blind into a 7 big blind pot? How likely is that tiny bet to get you to fold? Yeah, not likely at all. You're going to call just with the idea that I'm not going to let you bluff me for one big blind, 1/7 of the pot. Screw that, I'm calling out of spite. A lot of your opponents do that same thing, so you need to bet big enough. And we'll talk a little bit more about the bet sizing and hitting their pain threshold in a little bit. When it comes to barreling, or I guess you could say double barreling, c-betting the turn, or triple barreling, c-betting flop, turn, and river, you only do either of those if they can still find a fold. When they call you on the flop, you have to ask yourself, what are they doing this with? Put them on a range of hands that make sense for their player type and their tendencies to actually continue beyond your first bet and then to continue beyond your second bet. Your read on their range is going to help you make your bluff c-bets on every single street. Lastly, here's a really important thing to have. Anytime you're the pre-flop raiser, the pre-flop 3-better, you called, you limped and then called, you open raise and then called a 3-bet, no matter what your hand is, expect to get called and expect to miss the flop. That's the key thing. When it comes to c-bet bluffing, you're going to have to bluff most of the time. When you're facing a c-bet, most of the time, you're not going to hit the board. If you want to win it, you have to do some kind of bluff. Maybe you can stay in by just calling with the draw. But most likely, in order to win the pot post-flop, you're going to have to bluff. So start planning for not hitting the flop. Right now I got pocket 5s. What do I want on the flop? I want a 5. But most likely, I'm going to get 1, 2, or 3 overcards to my pocket 5. I probably won't hit a straight draw like deuce, 3, 4 for an open-ender. That kind of stuff it's very unlikely to happen. Most likely, there's going to be overcards on the board. How can I use those cards to potentially bluff my opponents, whoever they may be, off of the hand? So let's go through the 3 different hand histories right here, and we'll talk about the various strategies as we go. Alrighty, so pocket 5s, let's see the action here. Gotta fold, gotta open raise this, right? Fold, fold, fold. Okay, 2 opponents in the blinds. We actually isolated one or both of the blinds with our open raise right here. First player calls, like I said before, 27/8. Fishy player folds a lot on the flop to c-bets. Well, it's looking pretty good right now. Hopefully, this tight player, 13-13, tight aggressive player, has shown the ability to 3-bet. 3 out of 16. Wow, he's a 3-better. And he raises first in 11%, and then calls 0% of the time. There's a good chance that he's going to fold right now, maybe 3-bet. But if he folds, great. We got the fish heads up. If he 3-bets, we'll probably call, depending on his size right here. Actually, he's got a big enough stack. An interesting idea would be if he 3-bets, we can call. He might call or fold, but this player is turn honest. 0 c-bets on the turn, 3 out of 3 on the flop. We can call him on the flop. As soon as he checks the turn, we can steal it from him. That would be called a float bet within PokerTracker 4. But anyway, getting outside of the situation right here, we're c-bet bluffing our opponent. They both call. Flop comes down ace, queen, ace. Now, a few things to note here. Well, actually, check and a check. Great, we have the opportunity to c-bet this pot. Tight players fold more just in general. Tight players don't like committing chips, flop, turn, or pre-flop, flop, and turn without a decent hand, especially when they don't have position. They just don't like that spot. Now, we want to always ask ourselves, what street are they honest on? This player, we haven't seen any folding to c-bets yet, but we have seen him making c-bets. He's more honest on the turn as of just a small sample size, right? So if we want to c-bet this player on the flop, we're probably going to have to double barrel. Although, on such a scary board, if he continues, remember, you want to think about their range. What are they doing this with? If this player calls on the ace, queen, ace, wow, there's a good chance he has an ace or a queen. He probably won't give up on a double barrel, so you always need to consider that board. This player over here gives up on flops. So great. I think what we need to do is throw out a flop c-bet no matter what. Now here's the thing. Fold to c-bet greater than 50%. If they increase from a prior street is a really good indication that they're going to fold. Greater than 50% here. This player, like I pointed out earlier, 33 increases to 100. He can fold on turns. Now, can you rep a strong hand? Like, does your range hit the board? Absolutely. There's 2 aces on the board, but we open raise pre-flop from an early position. We have ace, king, ace, queen, ace, jack, ace, 10, maybe even like all the suited aces in our range too. We got loads of aces in our range. If both of them do not have an ace, it's going to be pretty hard for them to continue in this pot. So I bet half pot. Now, because this is ACR, America's Cards Room, PokerTracker 4 records the entire size of the pot, and it hasn't taken the rake out yet. But ACR, as you play, that rake is getting taken out and put into the dealer's pile over here. So this is actually an exact half pot C-bet that I made. Half pot is standard, but sometimes it might require 60 to 75% pot. But look at that board. That is so scary. For any non-ace, non-queen, non-even gut shot, even actually gut shots, Jack 10, they're going to hate this board right here. I mean, sure, they could hit a king, but they might already be dead to my pocket aces, pocket queens, ace queen for a full house. Everybody hates this board. Generally, when you bet, you want to hit their pain threshold without risking too much. I think betting 5, 6, 7 big blinds, yeah, that's risking too much right here. It's not necessary. They're going to fold probably the same portion of their range to this bet as opposed to a 5, 6, or 7 big blind bet. Now, a good betting strategy. Actually, we'll cover this later on. We'll see that one later. Yep. Good. So they both fold, and we take this bad boy down. Let's go to the next hand. Ace 8 suited. All fold. So what do? We got ace 8 suited, small blind. Tight aggressive looking player. So far has folded his steals 100% of the time. This is just a steal. I'm happy if he folds. But if he calls, like I said, tight players generally fold. Hey, I can probably get him to fold on the flop, maybe on the turn. He calls, so we're out of position now. So this is an out of position C-betting spot. Heads up. Hitting the backdoor straight draw, backdoor flush draw 1, overcard. Once again, half pot exactly bet. And he decides to call. So we have to ask ourselves, what are they doing this with? A key idea for answering this question is think about what they're not doing. A tight aggressive player against another tight aggressive player. If he has a set of 4s, a set of 7s, even a set of 10s if he didn't want to 3-bet pre-flop, he's raising all of those right here. He wants to get my entire 98 big blinds. And it's going to be so hard to do with only a 7.8 big blind pot. If he raises this, let's just say 2.5 to 5 big blinds, it's so much easier to get more chips in on the turn and even more chips in on the river. I'm going to discount, because he's calling, I'm going to discount all the strongest hands. I could even remove king 10 and queen 10 from his range. He's in position. He has that top pair. He probably wants to charge me. And as some players do, when they bet or raise, they do it to, quote, find where they're at, unquote. If he raises to 6 big blinds or 5 with queen 10 and I come back over the top, he knows he's beat. He can call, maybe even fold right there. But if I call him, now he knows, oh, this guy might have a better 10. He might even have an overpair like jacks or queens, but he's not being too risky. So now he can slow down on the turn with his raise. It gives him a little bit more information that I like my hand, and he'll base his next plays off of that. But, like I said, just calling on this board, total weakness, so it's a really good opportunity to double barrel, especially on a card that probably doesn't help our opponent. So I bet even bigger. Now, this is a good strategy for bet sizing. On the flop, half pot exactly. On the turn, I'm trying to tell him I mean business. I got pocket queens here, buddy. I'm betting bigger because I want more value. That board got a little bit wetter with a couple of clubs. In case you had some kind of backdoor club draw, I am now charging you sufficiently for your draw. And then boom, he folds. So this is a pretty interesting bet sizing pattern. I've even tested it before. Small on flop in this instance was half pot. I've tested 1/3 pot bets on the flop and then 40% to 50% on the turn. That works just as well. Just depends on the opponents, depends on the board and everything. But what you want to do is experiment with your bet sizing. When it comes to C-bet bluffing, there is not a one size fits all. because it truly matters the board that hits, your opponent, the type of player they are, the range, his position against you. So many factors to consider. Now, another great thing is a large SPR. That means they can find a fold a little bit more often. At this point, the pot's only 8 big blinds. He's got 176. I have 93. We have over like a 12 or about a 12 to 1 stack to pot ratio. Nobody's committed now, especially not him. Really easy for him to fold. Now, on the other hand, let's imagine he just had 30 big blinds now. He might be a little bit more committed and can stay in with any gut shot, a pair of 4s, pocket pair of 8s, because he doesn't want to believe I have a 10, because that pot is such a bigger portion of his stack. All right, the final hand, we're going tournament this time. So what you can see now is the tournament smart HUD right here, the full ring version for you. A couple differences. When it comes to tournaments, I love seeing the number of big blinds in my opponent's stack. So I have that nice and big, 32 big blinds in this player's stack, 49 right here. This also gives me the table average number of big blinds, so I kind of know where I am in relation to the table average. Loving the tournament version of the smart HUD. But everybody anteed up here, folded to me, and take a look at this. We have a loose passive player who folds to steals plenty. A loose aggressive player who folds to steals plenty. I love the idea of just raising to try to steal. I mean, if I make it 2.5 big blinds here and take this down, that's 2.1 big blinds, bam, to my stack, a 5% increase. I just love that. So the 2.8, I have to raise. Now, I do wish, looking back at it, I should have made this 2.2, maybe 2.5 big blinds, just to give them a little more incentive to fold, because that was the goal at the time of this raise. I wanted these guys out, take down that 2.1 big blinds. In tournaments, that's generally not enough to take it down. A couple other things. You always want to plan, like I talked about earlier, who can fold to Cbets. Let's work counterclockwise. Don't know anything about this player. So far, 5 hands, has played 0, maybe a tight player. We could probably get him to fold to Cbets. Loose aggressive right here. Tons of 3-bets, tons of raising first in, tons of calling. But hey, he's shown an ability to fold to Cbets. Definitely bluffing this player. Down here, doesn't call often, so he hasn't faced many Cbets, but generally kind of like a tight aggressive / loose aggressive player. I'm definitely going to try 1 or 2 streets of Cbet bluffing here. This one, folding 50%. 3 out of 6, I'm definitely going to Cbet bluff the flop, and then we'll gauge his range and the board if I have to double barrel that turn. This player over here, folding 67%, 2 out of 3. I'm loving that right there. Really good player to target. He called, and then we got a fold. Awesome, he folded. He must have had a really bad hand. I don't know if you can get much worse than deuce 8. I bet his hand was better than mine. It might have been 9-4. Who knows, right? But open raise, so I'm in position. Got 1 caller, heads up pot. Great opportunity to Cbet bluff. Now, look at that board. Really, there's a few draws available. Flush draws, straight draws, gut shots. Because he had to call so little, he probably has lots of kings in his range for a top pair. Lots of 7s, lots of 5s as well right now. He even has 2 pairs, sets of 5s, sets of 7s. Lots of good stuff potentially in his range. He checks, and I bet less than half pot. So this is another instance of small on the flop. Now, this is generally more accepted or acceptable in tournaments, but this works in cash games too. Going smaller bet, roughly 35% pot-ish, give or take. Now, he called. Now, here's the interesting thing. I think at this point, what are they doing this with? I think this player can call with any king, maybe not a really strong top pair king. Not king, queen, king, jack, king 10, but maybe king 4, king 3 suited if he called with that pre-flop. He could just check call this bet right here. So he does have some good top pairs, but I highly doubt he has a set of 5s, a set of 7s, or even king 7, king 5, 2 pair. I think this call really caps his range, and the big reason behind that is this is a wet board. Like I said before, flush draws, straight draws available. If he just calls and checks the next street, I can check behind, get that free river card. Well, first, I'm setting my own price to see the turn at 2 big blinds. I can check behind, see a free river, catch and beat whatever set of 7s, set of 5s very cheaply. So I think he would be raising with a very strong hand. So I'm going to discount most super strong hands. Even king, queen, king, jack, I'm going to take out of his range right here. Oh, good. Good thing I took out the king, jack, right? He doesn't have 2 pair now. So the jack hits. He checks once again. Now I bet 5 big blinds. Now you can see I'm going over half pot. I'm really trying to sell the idea that I raised pre-flop with a king, with pocket aces, with a set of 7s. Like, I'm trying to sell the idea I have a good hand. But hey, he's not buying. Doesn't believe me right here. Now, the king comes on the river. Awesome. I really do think he does not have a king. It could be, like I said before, actually king 4, king 3, a super weak king. But if he has a king, what is he going to do? He has 23 big blinds, 20 in the pot. Is a king just going to check here? Heck no. He does not want me to check behind. Whatever hand I might have, he doesn't want to miss value. He would bet with any king. King 3, king 4. He's not going to think I have a better king. Ace king here. No, no, no. His check means he absolutely does not have a hand. He might have missed a flush draw. He might have a 7 or a 5 that he could potentially give up on right now. So what do? Bam. I triple barrel bluff for over half pot once again, selling the idea I got a king. I'm betting half of your stack, 1/3 of my stack. I like my hand. You should call and give me value. And he folds. Hey, successful triple barrel in this instance. Alrighty, so if you want to do what I do and exploit your opponents with a killer HUD like this, or the cash game HUD we saw in the prior hands, you have to get the smart HUD for PokerTracker 4. Comes with 3 versions, the cash game version, this full ring version, and a 6-max tournament version. There are 7 custom pop-ups, which you've seen in prior videos, and here's the steel pop-up in this video. And also a 75-minute webinar, which in addition to these videos on YouTube about the Smart HUD, that 75-minute webinar, it's going to turn you into a Smart HUD exploiting monster.